Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a really cool, kind of unexpected connection between two absolute giants of American culture, Robert Frost and Bob Dylan.
Okay, so let's just jump right in with the big puzzle here. On the surface, these two guys seem like total opposites. You've got the poet of quiet, snowy woods on one hand, and the singer of loud, angry protest on the other. So how on earth could they be singing from a similar hymn sheet?
Let's think of this as a story of two journeys happening at the same time but on very different American roads. You've got Frost, this poet of quiet contemplation, whose words feel like they're literally carved into the page. And then you have Dylan, the restless troubadour, whose words only really catch fire when they're sung.
To really get where they eventually meet up, we first have to appreciate just how far apart they started. So let's take a look at how these two completely distinct voices chose to build their worlds.
So Frost, he built this rigid cage of meter for his words. He was a master craftsman, and he famously said that writing without rhyme was like playing tennis with the net down. But then you have Dylan, totally different story. He just lets his words spill out, structured not by old poetry rules, but by the raw, gritty energy of blues and folk. Now, here's what's really interesting. How we even define music for each of them. For Frost, the music is all right there on the page. It's in the rhythm of the syllables when you speak them out loud. For Dylan, though, the music is literal. His lyrics demand a performance, a voice, a guitar, a harmonica, to give them their full power.
So you can see how these deep-seated differences in style naturally lead to these vastly different ways of looking at the world, especially when it comes to social commentary. And man, this is where they really seem like they're from different planets.
The easiest way to think about it is this. Frost would whisper his critiques through metaphor, while Dylan would shout his from a megaphone. Frost uses a simple stone wall to get you thinking about huge ideas like tradition and isolation, but you've got to dig for it. Dylan, on the other hand, puts his message right out there in the open for everyone to see.
And this line right here, it's the perfect illustration of Dylan's whole deal. He's a direct challenger to the establishment. There is absolutely zero ambiguity. He's not hinting at change, he's demanding it. He turned this song into a genuine rallying cry for an entire generation.
This whole difference in approach even extends to how they use symbols. Frost, he found this deep, profound meaning in the real world. A birch tree, a snowy wood. But Dylan's symbols, they were often surreal, almost apocalyptic, drawn from this world of dreams and visions. A hard rain that sounds a lot like nuclear fallout, or that mystical tambourine man.
Okay, so they're worlds apart in form, style, and commentary, right? But here's the twist. Here's the crucial point where it all comes together. Despite all those differences, both artists were fundamentally obsessed with the exact same thing, how human emotion sounds. To really get their common ground, you have to understand this core concept from Frost. He called it the sound of sense. It's this idea that the melody of human speech carries meaning all by itself, completely separate from the actual words being said.
Frost explained it with this really simple analogy. Imagine you're listening to a conversation through a closed door. You can't make out the words, but you know instantly if it's an argument or a confession or a joke, right? Just from the rhythm and the cadence. That emotional tune, that is the sound of sense.
And here's where his genius really comes in. He would force these two opposing things together. He'd take the messy, natural rhythm of real speech and trap it inside the rigid, perfect beat of poetic meter. The emotional power of his poetry comes from that friction, the tension between those two forces.
So, that's Frost. Now let's pivot to Dylan's masterpiece, Blowin' in the Wind, which, pretty much became the anthem of the 1960s. He achieves a similar effect, but instead of using poetic meter, he uses the raw power of the unanswered question.
This question wasn't abstract, no way. It was a direct echo of the civil rights movement's agonizing fight for equality. The sound of this question was the sound of impatience, of an injustice that had just gone on for far too long.
And this one, it spoke directly to that existential dread of the Cold War and the growing conflict in Vietnam. The sound here is one of complete exhaustion with cyclical violence, a plea to just break the senseless pattern.
And maybe most powerfully, this question indicted the apathy of the silent majority. This wasn't just a political critique, it was a moral one. And the sound it creates is the deeply uncomfortable silence of complicity.
And all of this brings us to where their two very different paths finally begin to converge. Because despite their wildly different methods, they were both trying to capture the sound of the human soul.
So when you strip away the style and the politics, what do you see? You see that they were wrestling with the exact same universal human fears: loneliness, the search for meaning, and the struggle against a world that often feels indifferent to our pain.
You see it right here. Frost captures the quiet, personal pain of profound alienation and solitude. It's the sound of one person, completely and utterly alone, just walking through a dark, indifferent city.
And then here, Dylan captures the societal tragedy of answers that are obvious, but just ignored by everyone. It's the sound of a truth that everyone can see, but no one will grasp. So one is the loneliness of an individual, the other is the loneliness you feel inside a crowd.
Then, in 1964, another voice emerged that just hauntingly combined both of these anxieties into a single, powerful image. Paul Simon captured a world full of people who are together, but still completely, devastatingly alone.
Simon's masterpiece basically proves that the anxieties of the quiet poet and the protest singer were, at the end of the day, the same. He takes Frost's solitary figure walking in the night and places him squarely in the middle of Dylan's willfully ignorant crowd, creating this ultimate portrait of modern alienation. And so, their art leaves us with one last, really unsettling question to chew on. Which silence is worse? The quiet indifference of a snowy wood, or the deafening silence of people who simply refuse to listen?